All right, well, I think let's go ahead and get started. So everyone joining, thank you for joining. Gretchen, special thank you for joining and agreeing to do this with us. Super excited that we have this time with you. So to introduce and give a little background on Gretchen, she is a radiologist in North Carolina who years ago started doing expert witness work and became an expert in expert witness work and kind of how to optimize that as a side gig, which is kind of I've always like phrased it, it's kind of the lowest hanging fruit in terms of being able to leverage your medical knowledge into a really significant side income. And she then created Expert Witness Startup School to help teach others to be successful as she has been. And since we last spoke, she's added another accomplishment, which is that she's been to space. So she's an astronaut, which is just really, really cool. So, Gretchen, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to see everybody here. And hello to those who may be watching a replay as well.
Yes. Um, so, I think we'll kind of start out with, maybe you can talk a little bit about your backstory, how you got started in this, and what it's kind of meant for your career, because it obviously it's created a huge change and given you a lot of freedom.
Absolutely. The reason I always tell people if they ask, how did I get started as an expert witness? It's because, like many people, I got a call out of the blue from a lawyer's office. And I realized medicine, even though it was a very complicated medical case, the medicine was the easy part. It was knowing what to charge, knowing how to write an invoice. That all seemed completely Greek to me. But the reason that I said yes to doing the case is because I had been sued. Early on in my career, I read a breast ultrasound follow up and I offered a biopsy, and the patient refused because she was afraid of needles. I chose not to document that last part about the fear of needles. And, that's a learning experience. At the time, that was my judgment. I felt that it may have appeared judgmental or negative in the medical record, but now I know that that's just objective documentation. So, unfortunately, when she came back later, it was kind of one of these one in a million cases. She was later diagnosed with breast cancer and unfortunately later died. She sued me and others involved in her care, and I developed a really strong working relationship with my defense attorney, who showed me the ropes, who helped me learn about the process of being sued, and also introduced me to the concept of involving expert witnesses in malpractice cases. I just didn't have any awareness of that role. And so I learned in my very strongly defensible case, a very strong case, because the patient had been in the local news media. He was concerned we were not going to get an impartial jury. So ultimately, we decided to settle. But he said, when this is all said and done, you should become an expert witness. And I thought to myself, what I'd rather, you know, lose an arm than go through something like this voluntarily ever again. It was so challenging, especially early on in my career and very defining for me. And when I realized, though, that he was right, that I could put those skills to use and that it was a vital component of what unfortunately absolves a lot of physicians and clinicians during their careers, when I did get that call, I was ready to say yes and give it a try. That's what I learned. I had a lot more to learn about the mechanics of being an expert witness. And that's when I learned everything I could and decided to teach other physicians too.
Yeah, I think that's a very relatable story to probably just about everyone here. I guess I want to get into those mechanics, but first, give us a fast forward, from then to sort of, now or whenever, like how quickly did you scale up? How much were you able to scale up? Like, how significant did this become for you?
The amazing thing about expert witness work, when you're making $500 to $900 an hour, and I always charged early, I charged 600, but then I settled on 700 per hour for most of my almost 10-year expert witness career. And when you're doing that and you do it 3 to 4 hours a week, it quickly becomes $100,000 a year side gig, which I don't think we even have a really good word. It's like not even a side gig when that's more than a lot of people make in their jobs. But it grew very fast. And the exponential growth and organic growth as I met more lawyers and built my network and got my name out there and developed a reputation nationally for being a top expert, it just became this self-fulfilling positive feedback loop where I enjoyed it more and more. I got better and better at it. The more I worked at it, I earned, five figures pretty much immediately that first year and grew from there. I never got too busy because what I was able to do ultimately was scale down other things in my life and scale up my expert work and other things. So, expert witness work was not the last of my business. It was the first of my business building steps.
Awesome. And then I guess the part I want to focus in on quick, I think there are probably a decent amount of doctors out there who maybe have gotten a call once to be an expert witness. Um, and again, how do like it just became that one-off thing? So how do doctors transition from having it be a one-off thing to really making it a sustainable income source?
The most important thing is that you grow your network, both with attorneys, but also with fellow experts. That's how you have this self-perpetuating growth in your business is by knowing people who post opportunities or communicate that to each other. Like in my Facebook group, people post all the time. If an attorney needs an expert in a different case, there's a lot of word of mouth that happens. You also can grow your attorney network, and that starts with the attorney who calls you, just like it starts with your first case. So by starting something very simple like a database in Excel, you can keep contacting people and you can grow your network by doing a great job in your case, by doing knowing what you're supposed to do in cases, being open to feedback, and always doing your best work. Then you get more referrals and your network can grow. It was something that I intentionally worked on from the start was I read a book by Tim Ferriss called The 4 Hour Work Week. And that was the first experience that I had of leveraging other people's skills to help build my business. So the first thing I did with that was I didn't really know how to find lawyers besides Googling. And then it became obviously this really laborious process of building a database, of copying and pasting. So I hired a company called Brickwork. And because it was in Tim Ferriss's book, this is very early on in some of these e-commerce and virtual assistant platforms. And so not only did that help me build my first 500 lawyer database, that was really that first time again that I leveraged my time for someone else who was better at doing skills like that than me, that I could build confidence then in how to use that skill and that tool to build my business.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's like you said, your network is your net worth kind of thing. Like your network is a lot of times your success with these kind of, new endeavors. Um, I want to get into the logistics a little bit of being an expert witness. Just in kind of a broad terms, can you describe what work is typically involved? What's more common work than others? Are you in court, on like Law and Order type cases and stuff like that? What are you more commonly doing?
The most common place that I would find myself doing expert witness work would be right here in my home office doing work at the times that worked for me. So typically I would do 1 or 2 hours in the morning because I'm an early bird. So I like to get up early. I would make my coffee and sit in here before the kids were up, before I did my regular job, and I would review cases. For other people, they do it at different times, but that time worked perfectly for me. And it was a pretty satisfying thing to actually earn more money sometimes by the time 7 a.m. rolled around than I would typically make in a day. And it just gives you a real boost of motivation to know that something like that is really a good bang for your buck time wise. It was so much more efficient than taking an extra weekend of call or working another overnight shift. It just paid in spades in terms of that time and effort continuum. So most of the time you're reviewing medical records, in my case, reviewing imaging as a radiologist, and only, I don't know, 20 to 30 of my cases out of 200 total even went to deposition. And those are increasingly flexible now. Some of them are still remote. So some of them I could do just like this by Zoom. Lawyers have figured out that this saves them a lot of time and money too. So there's been even more flexibility built in. About three, I think, of my cases went to trial. And this is again over a decade and 200 plus cases in which I was retained. So trial is very rare, but it's just like an open book test and you prepare for it. It's no more difficult than when you have a conversation with a patient or a family, you're teaching. You're teaching the judge, teaching the jury. And in one case in Indiana, the jurors actually could submit questions on paper. And so that was really fun. And it was, again, just like having a conversation with a patient in clinic. Um, it was a really rewarding experience to go to trial prepared, you're confident, yes, you're nervous, and you handle it just like you do in honestly the far more difficult work we do as doctors. So these skills translate to so much that we do in medicine, peer review, critical thinking, knowing what skills and what resources to use to make better decisions and more informed patient care. Ultimately, that's the biggest benefit is that doing medical expert witness work can help make you a better doctor and give better care.
Awesome. And I want to welcome everyone. If you have questions, definitely pop them into the chat or just raise your virtual hand and we can patch you in and everything. But this is an incredible opportunity that we have this time with Gretchen, really to ask any questions at all. Some of the feedback, or when I talk to people about expert witness work, one of the things that commonly comes back to me is they're worried about the risks associated. Is there some risk involved if you are an expert witness in putting yourself out there and giving, an opinion on record? Can you talk to that a little bit?
I think biggest risk is, and I'm going to frame this a little bit differently, is being interested and wanting to do it, but not taking the first step. Because then you stay stuck, you stay in a negative mind frame about it, being concerned about doing it, being afraid of what could happen, and then you never do it and you miss this opportunity. And that's the biggest risk that I see. And I know that probably sounds, of course, that I teach the course and I'm successful at it, but it is truly the act of becoming a person who develops identity, who builds new skills, and who can learn from challenges in challenging situations. It's this like the secret sauce to life. And all of these things added up. And I mean, well, just to fast forward a little bit, but just how important I think these concepts are is, in the moments that I was in space, that's exactly what I was thinking was everything I've done has added up to these moments of feeling like my life is completely fulfilled, that I am in my best place. So from a mental standpoint, that's the biggest risk because it feels scary to do something new, but the benefits are proportionately great because it's something challenging and difficult. And I think what you're getting at, though, is there a risk of a business type risk? Could you be sued as an expert? Because the last thing any of us really wants is to face a potential medical malpractice lawsuit as a physician, only to get sued in a different way. But I'll tell you, the ways you can get sued, you know, get in a car accident, have somebody slip and fall in your driveway, or something else that involves you personally or professionally, those are far more likely to happen to you just statistically. I mean, divorce, right? There's a risk of, in marriage of getting divorced, and that's a whole bunch of legal stuff too. Trust me, those are the kinds of risks that are, again, you can help mitigate those. The good news is with expert witness work, the risk of being sued as an expert is very, very small. It's not zero for the same reason we have insurance when we do other things like our cars or our houses. You can get insurance for doing expert witness work. Typically, the premiums are $1,000 or $2,000 a year. It's tax deductible. So there's an answer to it. And
Mhm.
the policies are typically very specialized because they have to get lawyers who know how to defend experts. And by having a good contract, you build in a lot of protections and solid communication from the front. And when you know how to do this work and how to do a great job, that's ultimately your best protection. So, to my knowledge, knock on wood, I've, as an expert, sometimes the lawyers will try to make motions to exclude you from cases and you handle it, right? It's just dealable. But putting it in perspective, the potential risk you have of not taking action is the biggest risk. And there are other things in your life that you already tolerate in that you probably don't even think of that are far greater than doing work as an expert.
Yeah, I think that was really well said in general, and I echo completely your the greatest risk I think we have with anything is the risk of us not getting into the arena. Um, and I think we answered Kareem's question with that as well. Emilio, I see you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Are you speaking to me?
Yes.
Hello? Yes, hi.
Hi.
Yeah, forgive me. I'm driving right now, so so I'm not
Be
I'm not looking
careful,
at
be
the
safe.
camera. Um, so a couple quick questions. One is I believe I somewhere, Dr. Green, that you're not currently practicing your radiology, and if so, my question is, does it matter that you're if they're looking for an expert witness that you're no longer practicing versus someone who's actively practicing? Is it that would be one question. I mean, I have some follow-up questions if you don't mind, but if you could just address that first question, please.
Absolutely. So the easy answer to this is it's not a good time to start an expert witness practice if you are retired or about to retire. The longer answer to it is every state's a little different, but most of them will allow you to continue out your cases for 18 to 24 months after you retire. This was not retirement. So, yes, I did retire in February of 2024 when I turned 50. It was a long-term goal, and I definitely far exceeded and accelerated my progress toward that goal because of expert witness work and because of the other businesses that I built and put those skills to use. So that snowball built much faster. Even though I'd sort of stuck that number out and a goal kind of in the air, like, oh, retirement at 50, it became that reality at that point. So this was a very long-term thought out decision. I had been downsizing my clinical work from about 2016 onward when I retired from, well, not retired, but when I left my full-time partner position. So I was a full-time partner in a private community practice for 10 years after training. And in 2016, I left that job and went part-time. So that was a big transition for me. And I initially was about 4 days a week part time. And then as all the other things in my life got busier, I started sequentially decreasing my clinical time over years to the point where I was working about 2 days a week or so, or 1 day a week on average at the very kind of end of my clinical career towards 2024. Fortunately, I had a wonderful employer who understood my value and was willing to basically take whatever time I was able to give. And so I am eternally grateful to my practice for having given me that opportunity to still contribute in all the ways that I could, but still kind of ramp down gradual fashion. So that's what I did as I ramped down clinically. I my personal marketing. I transitioned my marketing basically to marketing their expert colleagues through the expert resource, which has been super rewarding and fun to do. So I just kind of tipped those scales away from myself and started promoting the community, focusing on the courses and teaching. And so when I retired, I had already stopped taking new cases. And so I've just been completing them out as their each individual lifespan has gone along. There are two cases that are still active, and they understand my timeline. And because I'm still teaching, it may still I'm still qualified technically to be in both of those cases, and I've just stayed in communication with them. But they know nobody practices forever. So when you have a thoughtful plan and you work towards it, that's what you have. Ultimately, though, what if you did have to just retire suddenly, something happened? Your contract has a clause like that. I call it the nuclear clause, where you don't want to use it, but you can resign from any case at any reason, for any reason at any time. That's the nuclear clause. And having a well-crafted contract is part of what gives you that option from, again, a personal protection standpoint, although you don't like to use it. But life happens, things happen. So these are manageable issues. People will ask me, what is the minimum amount of clinical work that you do to qualify as an expert? On average, for most states, about 1 day per week will qualify you.
And
Now
that,
you mentioned contract. Are you talking about a contract between you and the attorney?
Correct. So for each case, you'll have a contract. And I have an attorney with whom I work. She's a healthcare contract fabulous. She does healthcare and physician employment agreements and negotiations. And she and I spent hours crafting my expert witness contract along with my business in Chicago. And so with that final product as a template, she's available for an additional fee if you pay her for her time. She's super efficient and she can help craft your using mine as a template so you're not starting from scratch. So that's just an option for people who want to do that. I do recommend that you use a contract, and that is for each case with the retaining attorney.
And then you mentioned the insurance, liability insurance for doing expert witness work. Do you happen to know in general, when one has, like I practice full time and I'm an ophthalmologist, but when one has malpractice insurance, like I've done a little bit of this, just as you correctly pointed out, where they've come just to me for no good reason. I don't know. They just happen to pick up the phone and call me. But I've never researched getting a separate type of malpractice policy. Do you know if one has to have like a separate malpractice policy to do expert work, or generally will that be covered under your insurance?
Expert witness work is usually not covered by your medical malpractice insurance. However, some plans do. So just check with your own policy out. And if it's not covered, which again, it usually is not, but sometimes you get lucky, then you would get your own policy. And that's just for you as an individual doing the work. And that would cover generally the cases that you take moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Can I use if you don't have to answer specific
Involved with some third party agency, and they, I'm not so sure that they do cases, which are the intermediary between a claimant and, say, for example, a workman's comp case is a good example. I think they do other type of cases as well. And so I contract with this third party agency, and basically you give them your fee schedule and they kind of agree to it. And so when you mention your fee schedule of like somewhere between 500 and 900, I've got to say now, this may not fly in what you're talking about, but in terms of this agency, I charge 1,500 an hour, and that's what they're paying. Now, I don't get a lot of work from them. I'll get like maybe 2 cases a year, so it's just and I don't know if it has anything to do with my fee schedule. I don't think so. I think it's just I don't know the reason. I think that they come to me when there's a case that's local because what I have to do typically is I do an examination of the patient and then I review all the past records. So I'm rendering like a second opinion to the insurance company, but I'm also doing an
So this
examination of
is
the
a
patient.
great
And
example of a subset of work like this where you would do an independent medical exam. These are called IMEs, or some people do
correct.
insurance evaluations. So there are interesting niches that you can develop in addition to doing medical malpractice expert witness work. And I'm glad to hear your fee at 1,500, because the number one mistake most people make is charging too little. And
Right.
people will charge $400 an hour or $350 per review. So I don't want to see any physician doing expert witness work charging less than 500 at the realm for like generalists, internal medicine, family medicine, but around 800, 900 typically per hour for subspecialists and like surgical specialties. And ophthalmology typically tends to be at that higher range. So that would be appropriate. Now, it's possible using the middlemen or the third parties that they're taking a portion. So sometimes that hourly rate is not as accurately translated as if you were simply doing the billing yourself, which for those of you like this is totally learnable. It's, invoicing is not a difficult thing to learn. You don't have to have a secretary to do it. It's very straightforward to do once you learn. But for that range, most people would be charging individually about 500 to 900 per hour. So yeah, so thank you for being a case study. I see some other hands too.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks. Good for you.
Um, let's see. I have a couple in the chat, and then Ihab and Kareem, we will get to you for sure. Jay has a great question, which kind of goes into what you were just saying. Are there specialties more in demand than others? And I guess we can phrase this another way too. Can every specialty be an expert witness?
Yes, there's work for everybody. If you yourself have medical malpractice insurance, that means someone is suing someone. So it means that there's a need for experts in your field. I'm really not aware of any fields in medicine that carry no potential medical liability. So, yep. Basically, there's work for everybody. And I find some people sign up more often for the course. It tends to skew towards emergency medicine, anesthesia, some OBs, but that doesn't mean that there's more work for them. So different factors go into it.
Okay,
Yeah. Do you want me to read the questions in the chat?
sure. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. So from Arun, I just retired as a vascular surgeon. Congratulations. Does it make sense to then do part-time or do locums? Does teaching students and residents in a non-clinical manner count? So my question for you would be, what do you want to do? If you're trying to decide what would help you do expert witness work, you first have to know what you want to do that would lead you to it. So if you want to work part-time or do locums work, then do that. But don't do those things only because they are your avenue to doing expert witness work, because the other work is too hard and too time consuming and too life defining to do it if you no longer have to. So it's really a personal question. But what activities would qualify you for doing expert witness work? Certainly locums would. Working part-time certainly does. And if you are teaching in a non-clinical manner, like if you're teaching at a medical school, I think that might work to bridge a time, but I don't know that all states would feel the same way about that. So I think teaching is probably the least secure way of remaining qualified in the most places. Clinical work is going to be what gets you there. So from Jay, do the cases have finite deadlines? This would create some degree of pressure, considering it as a side gig. They don't have finite deadlines. Every case has its own lifespan, and there are so many factors. These things can go on from where you review a case and it goes nowhere to where you review a case and it goes on for 5 years. That's about as long as any of my cases went. And that's a really small number of cases. On average, just anecdotally, most of them, even if they went to a settlement or trial, 2, maybe 3 years, but some of that was skewed by COVID. They closed the courts, a lot of things slowed down. So, most of these, you should plan on it being, maybe a couple years at most, but it's highly variable. And the number of hours you work for each case, also highly variable. But most of the time, people worry that this would be a barrier. I don't want to get involved in something when I already feel like I can't fit one more thing into my daily life. That's a very different concern. The good thing is by taking some time from the margins now to create some of that financial freedom, you're going to create a lot more space and opportunity to change your life. I have a lot of students who incrementally make progress, like not taking any more extra weekend call, not taking additional days. Then maybe they go to a 4-day work week, maybe a 3-day work week. Some people go non-operative. It really is individual. But when you start to build some alternative sources of income that are as significant as this, it starts to give you a lot more power to make other changes in your life as well. So for Marin, should you or should you not go with an expert witness service and be on their network? Does that look bad? Depends who you ask. So some lawyers will say during deposition that you're advertising because you've listed your name on an expert witness database. Okay, so what? They have a website. They're marketing themselves. You better believe they're in the Bar Association list or, America's Best Lawyers. So just because people say things doesn't make it mean anything. It doesn't make it negative just because someone says that to you in a deposition. And when you learn, again, from someone like me who's been in your shoes and knows how to handle these questions, you can handle them in a very proactive way. Well, that's how I get my name out so that I can take more cases because I enjoy doing the work. It benefits patient care. Who's going to argue with that, right? Like that's very difficult to argue with. But knowing how to do that non-defensively is part of the skill. I would be cautious about working with some middlemen or third parties because sometimes they are taking a chunk out of the fee and they're charging the lawyers a lot of money and you're getting it after their cut. So it's just really difficult to know all those relationships and things in contracts when you're not the one making the contract yourself. That's why I like to teach people how to do it themselves, is because it's not hard, it doesn't take a lot of time, and you really keep more of the money and the control for yourself. So yeah, Ehab, sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I see you
Yes,
have a
thank
hand
you.
up.
Actually, my question was the same as the one you just answered. I didn't realize it was in the chat, but yeah, I was about to ask about the third parties, essentially, that may be well known in the business and have many experts who have good reputation, like mostly professors or people really known in their fields. And you still can make, I guess, good amount. You can still, charge the same amount you charge as you charge privately, but obviously you don't get as much business. Number one, number two, I don't know what the drawback of putting yourself on such a database would be.
Sometimes the drawback is that they will have a clause in a contract between the middleman and the lawyer where they can't come back. The lawyer can't hire you for a future case without going back through the middleman. So it limits your ability to work again with that attorney without, again, the guy taking the cut. There can be other stipulations There are organizations out there who will try to contract with you, and it's almost impossible to know their business model. So most of these posts in my Facebook group for the expert resource, most of them go the same way. Someone asks, has anybody heard of expert finder company Y? And what were they to work with? And either people haven't heard them because there's a lot of these who come and go. People try to do this work and they are not usually very successful trying to be middlemen, or the responses to the question are uniformly, I worked with them and I got screwed. Right? That's the pattern. I'm not saying all middlemen are bad. And I have worked with a couple where they don't get a fee and they work at different ways, but by and large that is the overwhelming pattern of the question and responses when this comes up in my group. So that's the experience that I can pass along to you. You will always be in a bigger position of strength when you have a direct relationship with the attorney, have your own contract, and do your own billing and get paid directly.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Kareem?
Yes, thanks, Dr. Green, for coming in today, and thanks, Jordan, for putting this together. I have a few questions for you. So I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I work in an academic institution. How is that feasible in a setup like this in terms of time commitment? The setup itself. I don't know if you have experience with this or if you have students who come from that similar setup. My other question is, other than the litigation that we previously discussed, I actually listened to you before, and I was interested in taking that step, and I spoke with my chairman, and he mentioned something that concerned me a little bit, that was in our society with the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons. It was I don't know if they reprimanded or censored one of the surgeons because they felt that his assessment of one of his colleagues in a case like that was unreasonable. So this is something is that a huge risk? Is that a uncommon thing? I don't know if you've heard that before. So I kind of took a step back a little bit.
Understandably, because these are professional risks that you don't want to risk your day job with a side gig. So understandable. And I think this comes to knowing what your contract says. So I always advise everyone needs to have their contract and review it. You'd be surprised how many physicians don't have their job contract. So, always good. And you can make some reasoning. I am doing some estate planning, and my advisor recommends that to be sure that I have all the information, that I make sure I have an up-to-date contract, a copy of my contract. Sometimes it has things like a job life insurance policy or a disability benefit. So it's very reasonable to ask about those things, and you can give a semi-different answer and still just make sure you have your contract. When you have your contract, look and see, are there clauses, number one, that specifically say anything about expert witness work? Number two, if they say anything about outside work. Some people will see that there is a limitation that they can't earn income from outside work. Well, that's kind of limiting. So in that case, you can petition for an edit or amendment to the contract. And my lawyer does this. She's excellent at negotiating things like this. What if you wanted to do some other business? What if you wanted to invest in real estate and make money, right? There are any number of possibilities where you may choose to no longer be under the thumb of a contract like that limits your life outside work. And that's the key, right? You're doing these things outside work. Then.
So I read that before because I was looking into this. I actually have it. I read it. And there are some things with outside work, but I think when it comes to competition, locums, moonlighting, things that would compete with the university from a clinical standpoint, or things that would affect my work or my commitment, or so I have to feel like a conflict of interest, conflict of commitment. And if it doesn't conflict, then it's okay. So I didn't sense that it was no, you can't, but I felt like, well, there's a risk there, and be careful and do it at your own. So I stepped
I'll
back a little bit.
I can
Right. And you
interject.
do it on your own time. You do it with your,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, Gretchen. Because I had in my contract, I'm in an academic employed practice as well, and initially my contract had something like that as well. And I talked to them about it. And really what they were concerned is just what you were saying, Kareem, like, am I going to work at another hospital, moonlighting, or something where it comes in conflict? And once I explained kind of what I was looking for, we were able to amend it. Because obviously I have the blog and real estate and all this other stuff. And I was like, I'm not giving that up. And they were very understanding of as long as it's outside hours, it doesn't conflict, etc. So I imagine that's a similar situation.
But so is there a risk then in terms of professional societies? Have you guys heard that before? Like, it's looked down upon. They don't because I looked one of those surgeons that my chairman told me about, and I looked him up, and it was right there on the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeon. It wasn't a good sighting, with his,
Right.
his name listed, and they felt that. So I don't know if this is a one-off. I don't know if you do a good job and follow the guidelines and do a good job, just like you do in medicine. Um, these things that can be avoidable, or what are your thoughts?
I've never heard of that happening. Um, but when I get for expert witness work, I haven't heard of it happening in that kind of instance. I would caution that, you'll hear in the media all the time about, you know, guilty verdict for amputating wrong leg, $40 million verdict. I mean, that stuff's in the news, more than we would like to, or, different kinds of situations, but that makes the news. And honestly, the medical board for each state typically publishes their sanctions or revocations or other consequences to people's medical licenses. Also nurses, PAs, anybody who's handled by your medical board, all of those are public record too. So there's nothing unique or different or more common about expert witness work that would make you more exposed to that. And the key to not getting sanctioned is, first off, you do want to be aware if your subspecialty has guidelines for expert witness work. Many of them do. And so you would read them, and they're probably going to say generic things like, you would rely on reputable sources of information. It's going to be all the same stuff that you would use in your clinical practice to do an informed and up-to-date job caring for patients. There's not going to be anything that's way out in left field that's going to require you to act dramatically differently in a medical legal setting than you would as a doctor, because then you wouldn't be in your area of expertise as an expert. So the best way you defend against that is by being a great expert who knows your society and your specialty's clinical guidelines, your white papers, position statements, but that you also use that critical thinking, just like you do in medicine every day, to say, yes, I am aware that this standard of care, well, not standard of care, but like a clinical standard is here. But in this case, that wouldn't apply because I wouldn't use that medication because the patient was already on a blood thinner. Whatever the situation is that indicates you're using judgment. Where people get in trouble is when they are way out on a limb by themselves with no support from the literature, where you can't point to your skills, training, and expertise to justify your opinion, that you basically are making something up. And I've seen experts for whom, they have, it appears, just made something up, some theory to try to explain why care was given or not given in the way that it was. Because then when my retaining attorney has asked, Why do you think they're saying that? I have no idea. I can think of no reference to support that, no textbook, nothing reputable that would point to that as a reasonable alternative. So honestly, what I would be looking at, maybe just out of curiosity, is look carefully at that situation and find out, do you think they got it right? And I don't know, but it may be hard to tell without all the details, but it's possible that just as some people, will be found to have not given care that was appropriate or that was below the standard of care, some people are going to do the same thing as experts. But when you're trained and you do a good job, you don't make those mistakes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll just comment. Hey, Kareem, what your society is looking for, just like the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, who are doing unethical expert witness work, just like Gretchen had said in the last minute. If you're out on a limb making crazy statements, or even worse, trying to use your position as an expert witness to get rid of competition in your town or punish somebody in an unethical way, then that's where they're going to come after you. Otherwise, if you're doing good work and providing testimony that fits with the standard of care, you've got nothing to worry about. So you don't have to worry about doing this and having problems if you're practicing like a great surgeon that you already are.
Yep, that's a great point.
Dr. Green, one last thing. If we sign up for the course, and I don't know what the resources needed after that, if we decide to take on this work, do we get access to some of your resources? You mentioned some contract lawyers. You mentioned some other things. Is that an option? Is that something that you would offer your students?
Yes. So the course, and Jordan, this might be a good time to kind of talk about the structure of it as well. We've got about 10 minutes left here. And the course itself has 9 modules. You get them Netflix binge style if you want. You get them all at once, or you can pace them out, whatever schedule works for you. We also have 4 live Q&A sessions. They meet typically 4 Fridays in a row. So the first one, as I'm looking at my calendar, is September 19, then the 26th, the October 3rd, and then we end actually on October 8th because I had a travel commitment. So we have 4 weeks of those live Q&As. You can submit questions in advance. There's a dedicated Facebook group, or you can just email me and I'll make sure to cover it. And the Q&As are recorded. So if you can't be there live, then you just catch up again entirely at your own pace. If you want to get that contact, you just ask me and I'll give you the contact information for the attorney. She has her own, attorney business. So anything you do with her clearly is between you and her charges, but she's very, very reasonable and she's just a fabulous resource. As for, another component that I've built up now over a decade is my database of lawyers. I have now over 15,000 lawyers in my database, and this has been painstaking effort over years and also really depends on my reputation. These are the same lawyers whom I have marketed myself to, quarter after quarter, year after year. And so I know the quality of that. And so I do have other options, generally quarterly, including after the course for those who are like, I'm really ready to go. I do offer a place in a VIP email blast that I send out to the 15,000 lawyers. There is an additional charge for that. Again, mostly tax deductible as a business expense, as is this course, or it does have 12 hours CME. So if you have CME money, that may work for this course as well. So there is a charge separate from the course, an additional fee. But you don't have to do those. I teach you that if you decide you don't want to spend more money, you don't want to do that, you can do it yourself. And I will teach you exactly how I did it myself, because those things didn't exist when I started out. I mean, I would have paid tons of money to not have had to build out that database, but it wasn't an option. So I had to learn how to do it myself. So that's why.
Thank you.
And the times for the live Friday calls, they are generally 12 p.m. lunchtime Eastern time on the Fridays. But the final Q&A session is going to be October 8th, 7 p.m. Eastern. So there is the evening. And, I've tried everything. I have tried weekends and middays and evenings. And I understand with busy folks like us, there's always going to be a schedule conflict for someone. That's why we record them. That's why you have the ability to email me or, ask the questions. So we build in that flexibility, but there was no one time that worked for everybody. So I picked the time that worked for most.
Awesome. And I think, Arun, did you have a question maybe to close us out, and then we can talk briefly a little bit more about the course?
Sure, sure. I guess the question is, um, a lot of people go into this with the idea that they're going to work for the defense, obviously, being physicians. What is your take on that, and how did that finally work out over the 10 years you were kind of doing it?
Yeah, that's a great question. That was Alan's excellent comment before. And I thank you because I meant to say that to bias yourself is to decide you won't take any plaintiff cases. And this is a mistake that people make where they think, well, I don't want to testify against other doctors. That would be mean or wrong. So I'm only going to take defense cases. And that way, it's ethically good for medicine, except it's not, because what it indicates is from the start, you go in presupposing that the other guy did it wrong and that you're right. And that's how you set yourself up for potential liability or at least just bad opinions. So my final case breakdown, and lawyers ask this all the time, so you get very practiced at answering, and I sort of kept a tally as I went. Even with my best efforts, marketing thousands and thousands and thousands of people, including defense attorneys, with 20% defense. That's just who called me. And so when people would ask, well, why was it so skewed like that? So it's just who called. And then I evaluate each case objectively, and I could review a case for the plaintiff, and roughly 40 or 50% of the time, just by my best guess, I would find that the person did nothing wrong. So even though you review a case for both sides, you're going to come to a different conclusion based on your objective review of the facts and the circumstances. That's what an expert
As a
does.
follow-up to this question, I guess, do you always ask for a retention, agreement in part of your contract? Because I've talked to some of my colleagues who do vascular surgery and have done that, and they never ask for that. And like, if you give an opinion that the lawyer doesn't like, I mean, they're not going to pay you. They say, "Oh, thank you, bye." So how
Yeah,
do you
maybe
work
they
that?
do.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes. I always charged doing the
retaining
math,
fee.
a 5-hour retainer, non-refundable.
Got it.
So at 700 per hour, my retainer was 3,500, and that was non-refundable no matter if I did 1 or 5 hours of work. Value in retaining you goes beyond just your hourly work. So this is one of the intangible benefits of being an expert that I never would have anticipated until I really did it, was there was value to my skills and what my expertise and the work that I had done for years that wasn't pegged to my time. Because when one side retains you, the other side can't, because then you're conflicted. So even if the one side says, "Oh, never mind, we're not going to use you because we don't like your opinion," the other side can't scoop you up. So you're taken out of play. And this is strategic. So one side could retain you, but never even use you in a case because they want to take you out like a chess match. This is what lawyers do, but you don't have to worry about the steps of the game. You have a good contract and you get that retainer, and they don't pay you, you don't work.
Thank you so much. That's great.
Yeah, my pleasure. This is one of the things I try to do a lot in the course, is empower people to get paid what you're worth. I mean, I think we're worth $457 million baseball contracts, right? We're saving people's lives. People literally could not live without us. And we're not going to get baseball player salaries. Many of us physicians don't even make the starting salary for a rookie baseball player. But having the sense of personal value from your skills that go beyond that just feels really good. And a lot of us need some good feelings.
Yeah, I think Gretchen, I couldn't have said it
We
better.
deserve that.
Um, yeah, and this has been fantastic. I think
I got the
probably,
money,
yeah,
Jay.
we could probably go for hours more. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you everyone for coming on with your questions. I know I can personally say I've taken the course twice now because I've gone through it a few times, and it's truly fantastic and an amazing resource. And like Gretchen said, everything out there, it's the same as any topic. You can certainly learn to do it on your own, but we can get there a whole lot faster and more efficiently by leveraging someone else's knowledge. And Gretchen truly is probably the foremost expert in all of medicine in this field. So I will be sending a follow-up email. I'll have some information about the course. For everyone who registered, we'll be throwing in a special bonus as well for anyone interested in the course in the form of my course as well. So, Gretchen, thank you so much. We'll certainly be in touch. Congratulations on going into space as well. And everyone else, thank you so much for joining, for your excellent questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for asking your questions and being engaged and being curious and being willing to consider this. It's a really great thing you can do for yourself and for medicine. And just logistically here, enrollment closes September 5th. So you only have a few days to think about it. If you've been thinking about it, go for it. Because, action is the antidote to anxiety. So, but just know that I only offer a version twice a year. So just know that that's your deadline coming up for September 15th.
Exactly.
Gretchen, can I ask you a question? How did you go to space? On which did you go
I
with?
flew on Blue Origin
You did.
and I
Okay.
became suborbids and I became the
Yeah.
first woman physician commercial astronaut.
Excellent. Excellent. That's great. Congratulations.
Very
Thank
cool.
you. I can turn my video off here for a second. You can see that's my headshot. That's now my permanent headshot in my
Oh
flight
yeah,
suit. So I'm
absolutely.
never changing my headshot ever again.
This is with Bezos' wife.
I went
Is
on the
it that
launch
one?
just after her, not on the all
Okay.
women's launch.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Amazing.
But yeah, if you want to know more about it, just search Blue Origin NS32.
Okay. All right. Well, amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good night.
Thanks.
We'll be in contact
Thank you.
soon.